This video is brought to you with the support of TrueFire's sister company, ArtistWorks. Learn from masters with ArtistWorks. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5 Watt World, where we're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. Where do tunes come from? What is it that makes us pick up the instrument each day? In short, what inspires us to play? I've been thinking a lot about inspiration lately because I keep bumping into this quote. I've often seen it simplified to, "Inspiration finds you working." But of course, I went digging, and it was actually the artist Pablo Picasso that said, "Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working." Picasso was a very prolific artist, and only a very small number of his works are celebrated. In other words, he worked tirelessly at his craft for his long life, and he worked hard to be ready for inspiration to find him. He's reminding us that inspiration exists, but it doesn't mean that no effort is required in the process, that you have to be making your art for inspiration to find you. If you enjoy our videos, make sure to subscribe or grab a t-shirt, hoodie, or stomp preset pack to support what we do. And to become a bigger part of 5 Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. The links are in the description. Naval Ravikant once tweeted, "Inspiration is perishable. Act on it immediately." And I love this idea, that if you're not sitting with your instrument, those musical ideas are not going to come out. So let's look at 5 ways to let inspiration find us working, and to be ready to act on it when it appears from within us. Number 1, go listen to some live music. Music is all around us these days. It's almost as if we've forgotten what musicians making music together look like. Audiophile YouTuber Steve Guttenberg, the audiophiliac, recently made a video with his suggestions on how to better listen to our music. I love Steve's stuff, and his very first suggestion about how to better listen to music is to imagine the players making the music. Picture them playing that music. See the drummer and the bass player linked up on stage. Watch the guitarist laying out, just watching them make the groove. In short, envision the joy of players making that music together. Steve lives in Brooklyn and has access to lots of great live music, so I'm sure he'd add that going to see live music regularly helps this exercise immensely. And I'd add that this doesn't need to be some big show coming through town, but do some local research and find out who the best players are in your area and get out and watch them make music together. There's something personal about seeing music in a smaller room. The crowd becomes part of the performance in a way that's much more rare in an arena. It's a moment of musical community, and you remember that you're all musicians, regardless of your level. You're a musician. On a recent live stream, my friend Tim Lurch reminded us that from the second lesson on, you're a musician. Once you set your feet on that path, it isn't about how fast you're going, it's about how much you're enjoying the trip. So go see some live music and enjoy that time with your fellow musicians. Number 2, the next logical step is to set up a band night. My old friend Dan Lurie from FYD Amps has been playing music each Wednesday night with a group of friends for over 20 years. Some of these guys have changed over the years, but Dan and the drummer have been there every week. And they almost never gigged that band. It's never been about the glory, it's always been about the hang, and creating a musical situation where they could support each other to play their best. I've been lucky to find a group of people to play acoustic music with here in Syracuse. Sometimes once a month, sometimes every couple weeks. 5 or 6 of us to get together and run through tunes. The tunes need to be easy enough for us to pick them up after a quick run through, and there has to be room to blow, or as it leans more towards the folk than the jazz side of things, pick a little something. Basically, leave room for taking solos going around the room, where everyone can play over a verse or a chorus. We go around the circle and take turns calling out tunes. And by the way, you're expected to sing the lead on the tunes you call, something that is a little scarier for most of us than trying to solo over chord changes, even if we don't know the chords that well. But as my turn comes around, I always remind myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? You're among friends, and everyone's going to take a turn, so lean in and sing like you mean it. The tunes range from bluegrass to pop. At a recent jam, without any planning, everyone settled onto playing covers of either Bob Dylan or the Grateful Dead. We ran around the circle for 3 hours with just those two sources, and no one had any trouble finding or enjoying the tunes. And in another night, because he'd recently passed, I worked up versions of 2 tunes by Gordon Lightfoot. After finishing The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, our fearless leader Jeff joked, we all take turns, but if your tune uses up your allotment of minutes for the whole night, you're done. Which brought laughter all the way around. It's this good-natured joking around that makes it easier to take risks, practice listening, soloing, laying out, and digging the community. It's that we're all taking the same risks that leaves us open for inspiration to show up. Because we need to know how to take a risk, set our ego aside, and listen to the music playing in our heads before it can come out in an inspired moment. About 10 years ago, I discovered Artist Works and signed up for the electric country guitar with Guthrie Trapp. It completely changed the way I approach the guitar, in every genre. Artist Works has affordable courses in a wide variety of instruments and styles available, all with master musicians ready to work with you using their innovative video exchange program. Get 40% off any Artist Works school using the link in the description, along with the code FWW40. Taking courses with Artist Works opened up the way I play, and it can do the same for you. I'd like to thank Artist Works for their support in making this video. And was there ever a better segue than to say, take some lessons to feel fresh? We all get in a rut, and we end up playing the same things over and over again. I often think about reducing the number of guitars I have. I know, it's just me. I think that I just play better when I know the instruments well. Encouraged by listening to Tim Lurch and Adam Levy, I went looking at the Collings I-30 guitar, and I came across this clip of Guthrie Trapp demoing one. As I said, I'd taken Guthrie's Artist Works course when it came out and have always loved his playing, but this clip showed me his shredding over changes at a whole new level. I was floored by both the playing and the tones of the guitar. I find that learning some new chord shapes, even some new licks, and practicing them over and over again integrates new shapes in my head and in my hands. The great jazz guitarist Jim Hall is said to have had a little sign on the inside lid of his guitar case so that every time he opened it, he read, "Play something new." Lessons are a great way to find that something new. And it's sort of a 3B, if you will. Try learning another instrument. Learning a second instrument is a good way to play something new. For me, it was setting aside the electric and the jazz blues thing I'm usually practicing, and instead picking up the acoustic guitar and try accompanying myself singing. In a very real way, playing acoustic is a different instrument, and it provides a break but keeps me playing. It isn't uncommon for me to look up the acoustic jam and see Jeff on upright and then 5 or 6 big acoustic guitars. It's in these moments that I think about renewing my modest skills on the mandolin. I've played a little mandolin since college when I was in a duo, and I've always loved great mandolin parts. This isn't just a bluegrass instrument, as John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin on Battle of Evermore or Peter Buck from REM on Losing My Religion showed us. So I'm going to dig into taking some refresher lessons and playing a little more mandolin. Of course, a logical instrument for a guitar player to pick up is the bass. If nothing else, you gain a deeper understanding of the bass's role in the type of music you're playing. And all of us should play a little bit of piano, if only to do our music theory homework. If you're a guitar player, go listen to some early Jackson Browne playing piano to feel that songwriting crossover. My point is, a second instrument takes us back to the joy of the beginning. What is more exciting than those early moments when you go from not making to making music? What the Zen guys call mind of moon, when we're open like the bright face of a full moon on a clear night. That feeling of doing something for the first time. And being a beginner to feel that moment when it all starts to come together. It's a great thing to be working, to being open to inspiration. Number 4. Okay, now we're going to get a little crazy. You can improve your ability to feel inspired by not playing your instrument. You might just need a break, so you can come back feeling fresh. In the late 90s, I played a weekly jazz gig with my quintet, Miles Ahead, for about 5 years. In 2001, I took a job at the University of Vermont and moved away. At the time, my poet friend, Liz Rosenberg, told me, "You're going to miss the band more than you think. You don't leave a lot of room in your life for organized imperfection." And of course, she was right. The stress of the new job left me very little time to play the guitar, but by the fall it was time to visit friends back in New York, and of course, I went to sit in with the band. The tradition in a jazz gig is whoever books the gig calls the tunes. And once I was set up and ready to go, I turned to the piano player and said, "Gene, what are we playing?" He just looked at me and said, "Call the tunes, man." It was as if it was still my band, such a beautiful and gracious bunch of guys. And you know what? It was one of the best gigs that band ever played. Having played together for 5 years, but also having taken a 5-month break from playing together, we were all listening much harder, concentrating on playing together, focusing on making each other sound good, and of making a great sound all together. Everyone commented on it. The guys in the band, the regulars who turned out to see us all playing together again, everyone agreed that the break had made something magical happen. After the gig, I had a 7-hour drive back to Vermont, and I spent the time thinking about what had happened. I realized that not having played as much, I was more likely to play simply, or even just lay out and listen to the band. We all wanted it to go well, and that got us listening to each other, and that left the space that was needed to be inspired. Number 5, JOMO. I recently heard this, and it has me chuckling every time I think of it. You might have heard of FOMO. I even talked about it in one of my earlier videos. The fear of missing out. A social anxiety thing where we think we're not included in something. Well, JOMO is the joy of missing out. A celebration of the fact that we get to choose to not feel like we're missing things. Embracing that we get to choose how we spend our time or what to do when we're taking the break from playing that opens us up to new inspiration. Feeling too busy to get the job done and then scrape time together to put time in on your guitar playing? Don't let yourself feel frustrated, but instead lean into it. I recently took a midweek trip to Montreal, a 4-hour drive from where I live in upstate New York, and it was great. The weather was gray and cool, but all we had to do was decide where we were going to eat, wander the old town, and look at the architecture. Another strategy is to read a book, take a mental vacation, dive into fiction to go someplace in someone else's life for a bit. George R.R. Martin, the guy that wrote the Game of Thrones books, said, "A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies, and the one who doesn't read lives just one." Or get some nonfiction ideas from books like Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, or The Almanac by Naval Abercrombie that I mentioned earlier. When I pick these books, I inevitably scribble down ideas for videos. Or get up and move, take a walk, look at the world outside of your head. Practice paying attention to other things. Another moment of wisdom from my writer friend Liz. Back when I was writing a daily blog, she told me, "The trick isn't in the writing. The trick is in the noticing the things to write about." And you have to practice this. Just like any other skill, it improves with practice. And while you're not thinking about music, you're sort of dumping cash, clearing the space needed to have inspiration show up for when we do sit down with our instrument. Essentially, all of these things are encouraging us to live as full a life as possible. Learn new things, enjoy the musicians and the music lovers in our lives, go places and see things, listen to new music, make mental space for new ideas to show up. A pet peeve of mine is when musicians say, "I was inspired by this new guitar, amp, or pedal to write this new piece of music," as if the music was in the gear and not inside the musician. Remember, we're the place where inspiration takes root, not in the piece of gear. Now, before you click off and start filling up the comments with your love for X piece of gear, I will say that I think people do find a magical amp, guitar, or pedal that resonates with them and helps them get out what they hear in their head. That's what I think of as a good fit. I think that's the fit that helps the music flow, not that individual piece of gear per se. It can actually be a really small thing. My good friend Jeff McErlane told me that recently he had an afternoon where everything he played just sounded terrible to him. The next morning he got up and turned on the amp and turned it from 2.5 up to about 3. And all of a sudden, everything was better. Now it could be that Jeff's 2-Rock only wakes up at about 3. long walk with the dog after dinner and a good night's sleep had left Jeff open to hearing the inspiring tones that we know live inside him. Inspiration was just waiting for the space to show up. I need to thank Guthrie Trapp and the guys at Collings for their permission to use the clip of Guthrie playing the I-30 model. And yes, I was inspired by that music, and mine is arriving on Friday. I need to thank the guys at TrueFire and ArtistWorks for their continued partnership on the videos. If you're going to take some lessons, use the links in the description, and you'll also be supporting the channel. So thank you as well. I want to thank everyone that stopped by the store and picked up a t-shirt, hoodie, mug, or the Stomp preset pack. And in particular, I want to thank the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. It's the guitar community I've always wanted. You're all 5 Watt world. I just make the videos. If you enjoyed this video on finding inspiration, then hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that too. YouTube tells me that 60% of the folks that watch my videos aren't subscribed. So hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for hanging with me until the end. Until next time, I'm Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt world.